My name is Pradnil Kamble. You can call me Pradnil. I am also in the group, so you can always tag me if you have any questions, and you can ask me any questions regarding this session or the previous session, or if you have any questions in general about our initiative, you can write in the group, and we would come back to answer your questions. So before I begin, I have to really emphasize and say that today's session is very important for you to understand. And for us all, in fact, we all have to understand the importance of data and how AI trains on the data, what's actually happening, and why people say that data is the new currency, data, and why is data so important in the future. So we will try to talk about that today. As I said, since the session is very important for us to understand and grasp our ideas around this session, this particular concept of data, I would be willing to answer all your questions in any of the languages that I know. So I can speak three languages. I can speak English, Marathi, and Hindi. So I'm more than welcome to answer all your questions in these three languages. So, as you know, the title of today's session is Data and Training AI. It's not a big session. Today we will have a fewer slides compared to the previous time, but we will extend our discussion because it's more important for us to discuss this critical topic. It's very, very, very important for us all to understand uh, what data we provide to the companies and what is data in general and how it can create problems to us in the future if we are not aware of this. Um, Okay, I think this is a good time that we begin with our slides. If you remember the last time I talked about why not we think about creating an AI company, right? Ourselves. Why don't we have a bigger dreams, bigger scopes? But for that, we have to understand, even for a small AI project, we have to understand how the AI is made possible in today's world, right? Um, we talked about energy and physical infrastructure. Of course, we need a lot of energy. We talked about the electrical energy that we need to run the computers, the data centers, the overall physical infrastructure. We talked about also hardware, CPUs, GPUs, and a lot of other processing units as hardware. But very importantly, we also talked about one of the biggest and the important layer, which is in between here. And we talked about data there. We talked about how important data is. Um, then we talked about how can we create software algorithms and model on top of the data that we have. And at the end, of course, this data is then reflected as a use case in the applications. So today we'll focus more on this important aspect that is the data, because it is really one of the thickest layer in our layers of soil that you can see. And it's one of the most critical and important layer. So what exactly is data and where is it saved firstly? So let's talk about what you need to have data or to save the data. So datas are saved inside data centers, right? And we all know now, and I think we can also read in a lot of news, we have been reading that the energy demand has increased severely or has increased enormously after the coming of AI. So we need more electrical energy now to run our data centers. And also we need clean water to run our data centers, and water we need in order to cool down the the data centers altogether. Because as you know, whenever you operate the computers in your house or something that some sort of device or a machine like your CPUs, when they are running for a longer time or elongated time, like your GPUs or CPU in your house, they warm up a lot, they heat up a lot, and for them to cool down, you sometimes have a fan, but in your data centers, you have a system that uses water to cool down the data centers altogether and to maintain a working temperature in these data centers. But also to cool down, you need more energy, right? You need more electrical energy to cool down even. So that's why the demand of electricity and electrical energy has grown significantly. In today's session, we will also go back and forth inside the browser, and we will search actually a few things just so that we are aware with a few concepts. So as I said, that we need data centers, and that's why all the nations in the world who have realized this and who have realized the importance of AI and its solutions are working towards building a lot of data centers. And one of such example is the Navi Mumbai Airport Influence Notified Area, which is also NAINA city, as they say. And they are trying to build their, or in fact, they envision that we can put or scale up India's biggest data center there. So just to see that, I think you can also look into Google, and that is what we will try actually in today's session, to go back and forth and see if we can actually. All right, here. And if we can go here, oh, of course, Valentine's Day, and that's why Google looks like that. But we can start type about NENA City Data Center, and we would like to see what exactly is this, right? So as I said, NENA is this particular an acronym for Navi Mumbai Airport Influence Notified, is being developed by SIDCO and major hub of IT commerce and notably data centers. Uh, what's really interesting is that it's a very huge project. There is a big amount of investment that they have done, and we can see that people are moving in this direction now. And we have okay, let's check out this one, and this says something really interesting. It's that it accommodates around 1.5 gigawatts of energy is required in order to, develop this particular uh, park. And this is a lot of energy, by the way. And I'm sure it will be even more than this. And the goal of this data centers is to also support the research and development in India. So I would like you all after the session to read about this and to understand why are we investing so much. As you see that we are really okay, here we can see that we are really investing a lot of money to kind of build such projects, to build data centers. So it's really critical for us to know why exactly do we need these data centers. Why are we even talking about these things? Um, so I would say that go ahead, Google this after the session and read more about this. You might understand why the property prices are going up in this region. Why do we need so much of electrical energy that we just talked about, and why do we have to invest so much money and so much project ideas, so much manpower, and why do we even need so much of land, basically? Uh, and it's going to be very serious because we are going to consume a lot of energy and water as well. Not just energy, but as I said, a lot of fresh water as well. So look into it and you will understand where everything is moving and what is the trend of the future. So with this, we go back to our slides. But the next topic and the next slide is, now that we know how the data are stored, now that we know where the data are taken care of, like the data centers, we just saw NENA City or the NENA idea of Navi Mumbai, and their investment is huge. But what exactly is data? What is data? When we talk about data, what do we mean? Right? That's one of the pressing questions I think we should ask. Um, so data can be anything. Here I list down a few points. Uh, Number one, data can be anything. It can be text, it can be images, it can be numbers, it can be your sensor data, or it can be a survey that you do on your phone. Data can be anything. Anything uh, means text, images, numbers, or the surveys, sensor readings, and everything. So with this data, you can train any AI models, and we will go into that. What do I mean when we say that we can train any AI models? What exactly do I mean? Um, as we know from our previous sessions, previous two sessions, that AI learns from data, right? So it's very important for us to understand and control data. So if we know what data is, we will know what the behavior of AI model is because it eventually learns from data. Data powers the AI age. We know that, and that's why a lot of governments all over the world, US, Europe, India now, we saw that. India has two major plans. One is the NENA city or NENA place that we talked about, and then the other data center is in Bangalore. And both of them are competing to be the biggest data centers. So data powers the AI age, and that's why everyone is trying to invest money in this direction. Data represents power. It's very important for us to understand this. Data represents power because uh, whatever the AI model is saying today, or it will be saying in the future, is really what the data is. It's really basically the data that it has been trained on, right? Because AI learns from data. So if you control the data, then you control the AI model. Or if you rectify and improve the data, if you correct the data, you will eventually correct the data, the AI models. And we will talk about that. What do we mean by this? Um, and just a few examples of how companies are collecting your data in your day-to-day life. Sorry, I'll be sipping a cup of tea in between because of my coughs. But the idea is that we all use Instagram, YouTube's, or YouTube Shorts, or things like that. And in all these platforms, in all these social media platforms, um, okay, in all these social media platforms, uh, they try to track the data that you are basically using their app for. For example, if you like a particular reel or particular content way often, or then basically they are tracking that. They are tracking what their users are consuming, what their users like, and based on that, they are always recommending you a lot of content. And that's why Instagram is so addictive, and it always shows the tailor-made content. It always shows something that you want to watch. So basically, all this content, there is an AI in the background or a machine learning algorithm which takes all your data and it tries to learn from the data and gives you new ideas that you should explore, basically. But now this AI algorithm has even advanced further because it also gives you new recommendations based on what it thinks that you might like. For example, if you have watched a lot of videos about Baba Sahib Ambedkar, then you might also slowly start getting videos about other people from the community, or other ideas. For example, some ideas from about Buddhism, some ideas about the world and other emancipators from the world. So it will try to recommend you a lot of ideas. And we have come across this and we have realized this, that whenever we talk about something, a lot of us we usually see it reflected in our Instagram feed or YouTube shorts and everything. So this is one way that we see AI being used a lot on our data. The other thing is CAPTCHA. So whenever you visit some sites, there are these captions, the CAPTCHA that the sites give you. Usually they say that this CAPTCHA is for us to protect from some AI that is trying to, take over our website or trying to access our data. But it's really you providing them the data. So whenever you select for example, in this particular image, as you see, the idea is select all squares with traffic lights. So whenever you select these squares, this data goes back to an AI model, and the AI model learns from your labeling that this is the right answer. So eventually in the future, when we will have self-driving cars, right? These cars will be just on a higher level. It would be more easy for these cars to recognize a traffic light because we all have sticked them and trained the AI model to see what is the right traffic light, right? So companies are trying to collect data however they can. Because as we said, data is very important. Data powers the AI age, and data represents power. So companies are trying their best, possible best, to collect this data. They are doing it with the CAPTCHA, they are doing it on your Instagram feed. Or sometimes a company sends you a survey that if you fill out this survey, we might give you some discounts. I'm not sure which companies do that, but there were a few companies when I was using their apps. They used to send me a survey that can you do this 2 minute survey? We might give you 10 minutes, 10% discount or something. So the overall idea of this is that they want our data and they are trying their best to get our data. Um, and in India, unfortunately, the data protection of an individual is not that strong. So also some of the data is given to the companies without you even knowing about this data. Uh, okay, so without your consent, this is also the case. And to avoid that, we have a wonderful model here in European Union. This is something that we should learn from, of course, and it is called EU GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulations. So this gives the individual of European citizens a lot of power because they can grant access to their data themselves, and they have the right to rectify their data. They can always call the company, any company, and they can say them that we don't want our data to be in your company, so erase it. And the company has to do that. Firstly, the company has to provide them complete information about what data they have from these individuals. And if I am not happy with a company, for example, there is a company that I order food with, right? Let's say I have a Swiggy or something. And when I check what data they are collecting, I realize that they are collecting data about my locations, where I go on vacation, what I do during my vacation. They are collecting also the photos that I click during my vacation. So I have the complete right to ask them that you are a food company. Or this is an example. I'm sure they are not collecting anything like that, or maybe they are, but this is an example. So it's not based on any factual evidence, but I'm just trying to frame an example that this companies, when they collect your data, you have the complete right in Europe to question them that why you exactly need this data and I want it to be deleted. But in a lot of nations, we don't even know what exactly are they collecting. So this is very important for us to know that we protect our own data. We don't give away our privacy just as it is. We don't circulate our personal important data because the companies definitely want it, but we have to protect it ourselves and we have to understand what they are going to do with the data. And now that we have talked about data and we know that data can be anything and everything, we talked about how we should. There are many practices that we should do to protect our data, which you can definitely check out after the sessions, and we can also discuss about this in the group. But importantly, you should know that data is very important in the AI, for the future of AI. And companies are trying their best to collect their data. So every company wants you to give them your data for free, of course. So if you do the survey, you get 10% discount. If you do this or that or something like that, you get discounts. Um, so now that we talked about data and we know that data can be anything, we are talking about another important aspect, which is what is biased data, what is biasness in data, what is underrepresentation in data, and what is labeling bias of the data. So let's imagine now that just one community from India has managed to give all the data to this AI. Uh, uh, for example, all this AI training companies or something like that. For example, ChatGPT, let's say, OpenAI. So imagine that only one community or group of people give all the data to them. And now, whenever you talk about with ChatGPT about India, it will always talk about that particular community. And it will not talk about the complete Indian scenario, right? Because the only data that was provided to the training of ChatGPT or such a model, AI model, uh, is from a particular community or a particular group. That is basically also underrepresentation in data, because of which there could be a bias in the AI model. And it's strongly supported by a lot of researchers right now who have investigated this bias. And this is very serious need of time and something that our community and all of us should understand at a very early stage. Because what is happening, here are a few examples. You can also use these tags, the DOI and the document ID, to search for this reading material after the session. And you should definitely read these very, very, very important papers. There are many more. Because of the time limit, I can only talk about four papers in this scenario. But these are research papers which you can go and check. So one example could be about gender bias. So in Amazon, basically, the company Amazon, they tried to select candidates for applications because a lot of people apply for jobs at these places, right? A lot of people apply to get hired at Amazon. Um, so they had a lot of applications. So they decided that why don't we have an AI model to do the screening of these applicants, right? Why don't we run AI models on all their CVs, resume, and check which individual is worthy for getting an interview with us, something like that. So for their screening, they used an AI model and they realized that for some reason, a lot of women candidates were rejected. And when they studied that, they realized because a lot of AI models that were trained on the historical data, and data has a lot of biasness, had a lot of events in the data or had a lot of content in the data which favored male uh, male individuals over women individuals. Just there could be many reasons. One reason could be that a lot of engineers in Amazon's earlier in the history were male, let's say, compared to women. The other reason could be just because there is so much biasness in the data. The data, most of the data centers and most of the data scientists in the world earlier were a lot of men. So they maybe were not sensitive about these topics, that how to end this biasness when they were collecting data. And a lot of data on the internet, also there are a lot of people who have a lot of problems with different genders, which is very wrong. And they also have a lot of data that is generated, which goes into these models. And of course, then there is a lot of gender bias. So this is what they would realize. They realized that during the screening, a lot of female candidates are selected for no reason, even though they had wonderful uh, CVs, even even though they had more stronger skill set than their male candidates in this comparison. Even then, just because of their sex, they were rejected uh, during the screening test. The other example of data bias is about from the police system, the policing system in US, which I talk about here in this particular paper. It's talked extensively. Um, so here, what happened is that a lot
How you
of
doing?
the data by the policing system. Okay, I think
How
we
you
have one
doing?
user who is not mute. All right, I mute him. So a lot of um, data that these policing systems had earlier were based on the past, firstly, and also they were based on interrogation of people. So in the US they realized that usually people with darker skin color are interrogated by the police more often than the fairer skin color in this case, and they talk about a particular location which I don't recall right now, but you should read this paper to understand this. So the people were in so the people who were interrogated the most in this particular region were the people of color, so mostly the dark skinned people. um, and they were just interrogating them. Interrogation does not prove that someone has created a crime, right? But it's part of the data. Even if you talk to someone, interrogate with someone, you have to write down the data. So when the models were trained on this data, they started predicting that again a person with color or a person from who is not white, let's say, is predict is more of a criminal than compared to anyone else. So that is what where the predictions were going terribly wrong, because there was a bias in the prediction, and this bias could be because of wrong representation altogether, right? So there are things like this, and this is something that is happening with all our AI models right now, because the data that was collected in the past is biased, and it does not really represent everyone in their own in their complete sense, and it is also based on a lot of historical data by history, and it tries to predict that this is what is going to happen with all the humans in the future, or this is something that is the truth. So this is an example of data bias. Gender bias and discrimination, racism, let's say, discrimination by someone's color, is something that our models directly learn, obviously, because that is reflected in the data. The other examples are about caste issues, and how this is becoming a bigger problem, because there was a group of researchers in this particular paper ID, which is a preprint and it's archived, so you can also read it online. They tried to generate, or they tried to study 7,200 stories about Indian traditions, weddings, their rituals, and things like that. And shockingly, they saw that most of these stories uh, were talking about the society, the Hindu society that calls themselves as upper castes. So these stories were dominantly talking about them. So, for example, I am someone who is going to create policies in the future, let's say, for the Indian community, for the Indian people, let's say. I want to create policies in the future. And in the future, as we know, a lot of things like policies and this and that will be influenced or will be used or AI will be used to kind of also create these policies in the future or to effectuate it on the ground level, right? So if I'm using these AI models, the stories that these AI models will talk about will be severely biased because they will only talk about stories of this particular group, which is not a big, uh, sh- big share of the Indian population, let's say. So this is not India, uh, and their stories are is not the complete story of India. So this is what is happening in the GPT. 4, which is one of the chat GPT models. It's a very prominent model which a lot of us use even now. So this could be because of overrepresentation of some culture and underrepresentation of other. This could be because maybe there are not much stories from the oppressed or marginalized communities that are on the internet out there. Maybe their stories are not in the big journals right now. Maybe their stories are not in the big articles, and that's why they were missed during the training of the AI model. So when you visit these AI models and when you ask them to make your policies, or when you ask them about the story of India, the story that they will most probably narrate is the story of this group, right? And it's important for us to know all of this so that you should visit these papers, check out, and you'll realize that there are data biases. In fact, one thing that they realized, which is very interesting, is that our finding also suggests that the representation bias in LLMs, which is the AI, has a winner take all quality that is more biased than likely distribution bias in their training data. So this is more concerning because, sorry for that. This is because if the data is biased, then the LLM becomes even more biased. So if there is no data from your community in the LLM, and when it is trained, it becomes even more biased because LLM wants to sound more confident or AI wants to sound more confident, right? So it tries its best to give all the credits to the winner. So the winner take all quality is basically data getting even more biased towards the overrepresentation of a particular group or ideas or something like that. So as a community, if our ideas, or in India in general, if all the people oppressed, marginalized, and everyone, if their ideas are not part of the data or are not on the internet on these prominent websites or text form as a text form, then they will not be used to training these models. And hence, all the policies, all the ideas, or the narration of your nation will be a biased narration because it will be from the point of view of these particular communities, which are not the bigger part of the India, like for example. The other paper, sorry for that. I think it's time I drink. I took take a sip of my warm tea to calm down my throat. The other paper that we are talking about is this particular preprint, and this is its ID, digital ID, which you can also read after this session. It talks about how if you ask an LLM that which community is doing what task, it is more likely going to associate all the good jobs to the so-called communities which are the upper caste as for them, and which is a small group of India. It's a small set in India compared to the bigger set in India, which are a lot of other communities. So all these other communities will be given bad jobs or bad tasks, will be represented as someone who does manual scavenging or someone who does cleaning of the roads or something like that. Whereas if you talk to these AI models that who deserves or who is more better suited for an educational role, or who is better suited for creating businesses in the future, then it will give all the credits to this small set that we talked about. So this is one another big issue that LLMs or these AI models are creating because of the data bias. And if we don't talk about them, then the future is going to be terribly biased. Because imagine we reaching out to these AI-driven banks. Let's say in the future there will be banking system which will take your data and which can give you, which can decide if you should get a loan or if you should not get a loan. But if the data is so biased, it will go through your name, it will go through your background, and it might realize that, oh, this person is not more suited. It doesn't have a reason for it, but the reason is underrepresentation in the data. So it's very important that we talk about this. And as a community, we also talk about the quality of data, and we produce more and more data so that it goes inside, or we discuss about these topics so that the AI models or the people who are training these AI models get penalized, and they work to kind of have proper and equal representation of all of us. Another approach, other than this paper, this is an interesting read. Definitely, I would recommend you all to read. Is something called as IndyCasa, the last one here, which is basically a framework to test LLM models and the stereotypes. It's a very interesting paper, and I would also recommend you all to read. They are trying to create a framework that can check how biased your LLM model is, which is very interesting. And they are also checking about how casteist your LLM models or AI models are, just because of the data, let's say. So this is what is happening uh, behind uh, the training of AI models, because the data is biased. There is also overrepresentation of certain ideas, groups, or communities as well. And then there is also a lot of labeling bias, because let's say someone who is training the AI model has a casteist nature attached to them, or is casteist or sexist in general. So they can also ignore or not properly label the data, or not properly reach out to the right groups to kind of label this data in the AI revolution. So this is something very critical that we should understand. With this, I'm finishing this session, but I'm giving you an ideas that what is needed is that we all should practice diverse data and fairer data. We all should practice on generating high quality data as a community. And we should all realize that this is a serious problem. I've just given you three examples of data biasness. We talked about how data could be how there could be gender bias. We talked about how there could be racism by the AI models. They could act because of the data bias. We talked about casteism as well, that these AI models could also reproduce because of the bias and underrepresented data. Now that we have talked about this, we are moving to a different topic now. Now that we understand the importance of data, we know that where we are storing the data, we know that people are investing or governments are investing more in creating the data. Huh. I think the next topic is now the other part of our session today, which is how do we train now with this data, right? So first of all, we need big quality data set to train an AI model. An AI model is just a very large mathematical equation made up of all simple mathematical operations. Simple mathematical operations could be addition, um, which could also be multiplication, division. So these are simple mathematical operators. So an AI model is a huge mathematical equation that uses more or less these simple ideas to create a particular framework, which we will talk about as well. So this you can imagine as an AI model. So what happens is that when you give data to the AI model, it tries to do prediction. It tries to check, it tries to predict the next thing sometimes, right? For example, today the price of a particular property in Mumbai, let's say, is so and so. How much will it be in the next 2 years? So when you give the data of to the AI model, which affects the prices, the AI model, the mathematical equation tries to learn like what will the future look like, and based on that, it generates prediction. So not all the predictions are initially at the initial stage, at the starting stage, are not always right. They are mostly wrong, right? Because of course the predictions can't be right from the very start. The model has to train to learn to predict. Even a child has to train to walk properly, right? When they are young, they fall often, but as after some training, they try to walk carefully, and then they eventually learn how to balance their body and then walk. Similarly, an AI model at the very start is like a baby, like an infant, which is which gives all wrong predictions. But what we do is we take these predictions that the AI model has done, and we compare it with truth. We compare it with what is the ground truth, what is the reality. And when we compare it, we subtract these two. And when we subtract them and when we compare them, we realize that there is an error in the prediction. The prediction was not right, obviously, at the start. So our goal would be to reduce this error more and more possible. The less the error, the better the predictions, obviously, because the more predictions come to the truth, the less the error there will be. And if there is more error, we adjust the model accordingly. So this is called adjusting the model. And this error in our AI language is called loss, basically. So whenever you train an AI model, when you give the data, when the model is been trained, it gives you predictions. You compare the predictions with what is the actual truth, and you generate a loss. You say that, when there is a big loss, you know that the model is not doing good, right? You realize that, oh, this is not good. I want to adjust the model again. And then you go back and adjust the numbers inside this large mathematical equation. After some iterations, after some time, you come to a point where the predictions are good enough and the loss has significantly reduced. Significantly. When you realize that the loss or the error has reduced significantly, you are confident that my model is ready, and this is the time when you deploy it inside your applications. So this is how the training of the AI models usually work. I want to give you an example of an interesting data before we move to this training, before we conclude this training section. It is that how our brain also processes something similar to an AI model, for example. In this case, we are talking about looking at something. So when I look, or we all look at a plant, the image of the plant goes through our eyes, basically the lights that is coming back to our eye, the reflected light from the plant goes inside our eye and falls on our retina, right? And a retina is the receptive wall behind our eye. Okay. So this receptive wall takes that image and breaks it down into edges, colors, motion, and bunch of other list. There are many other things that you can really get out of this particular image. One thing I could do is I could give all this numbers. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 for everywhere where there is white, and maybe some number where there is green, maybe some number where there is brown. So we can transform this into a complete matrix, into a list of numbers. And then through this, you can separate it even more into the edges. How many edges are there for these plants? What is the color? And based on all of this data, your brain, based on this number, your brain decides to react what it is. So your brain gives an answer, it's a tree. Sorry, it's a plant in this case. Similarly, an AI model could also take an image of this and really do something like this. It is called convolutional neural network. It does something similar to this. It generates a vector or a list of numbers, and then it feeds to the AI model. So this is the data in case. And then it predicts. Then it predicts. And let's say if the prediction is a cat, then the loss is huge because it's not a cat, it's a plant. So what we do is we compare with the truth. We say that the loss is huge, and we put it back to the AI model, and we say that no, 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 we are not happy. It's not a cat, it's a plant. So go back and redo it. And that is how we then tune or tweak the numbers inside this large mathematical equation. And we run again, basically, the same process until we get plant as our prediction. This is a higher level idea of what is happening and why an image is also a data. Uh, it not it does not work completely like this on a lower level. As I said, it's a higher level idea, perspective of how training works. And this is more than enough for you to understand what is really happening with your data and what is the loss function, how do you adjust your models and things like that. Earlier, we talked about creating our own company, right? I was making this scenario where we had, let's say, a plant and we want to track how this plant is growing. So the soil type, humidity, sunlight hours, these are all the data that you have already. And the plant growth is something that you know. So if I have a particular soil type, if I have a particular humidity, and if I give it particular sunlight hours, I know how much my plant has grown, right? So this is my data. This goes in here. My AI model predicts how much the plant has growth. If the prediction is wrong, it gives a big error and then adjusts the model accordingly, basically. So the point is for us to understand the process flow of what is happening, what is data, right? In this case, the data was an image. In this case, the data is just pure numbers. It's just pure numbers. Here it's the time, here it's the humidity, here it's the how much by with what centimeter the plant has grown. So the data can be anything that the AI model can learn from. Now we are on our last slide almost, and just wanted to show you some data because people keep asking how the ChatGPT or AI models are being trained, and they have a lot of questions about ChatGPT. So I decided to include this particular section here, and we will just go through all this large language model, and we will talk about where do they get their data from. So there is a database already available out there, which is called Hugging Space in this case, Hugging Face, sorry, in this case. So as you see, we are on the Hugging Face URL right now. And as you can see, this is a large scale 15 trillion tokens, 44 TB uh, LLM pre-training data that is available out there. So this is the data of the internet, the high quality internet data. And on such a similar data is what ChatGPT was trained on. So this is all your text that is available on the internet written into a particular document. All the text, not all, but a lot of internet related data from the historic, from the data from the past and the current data which has been present on this website. So you can check. There are many different types of data sets here, which you can of course use to create an LLM model like OpenAI, like ChatGPT or something similar. You either crawl it yourself, so you can either collect the data yourself, or you can use public repositories of this fine-tuned data. That is what they are saying here. They talk about what is a good data. They talk about what is their data set, how to get this data set. This is the data set of the internet. It's mostly text. It is mostly English language, but there are also different languages in this data. And this is the complete data that is out there on the internet. Um, like more or less a big chunk of data that is out there on internet, let's say it that way. So the data set itself is available here. So you can go on this link to kind of download this data. So, so the data is available. How does this now, but, but just with the data, the GPT can't learn, right, to talk like human beings. So for that reason, a lot of these models and a lot of these companies, what they did, I think I read it somewhere here. So they did collect a lot of data from the humans. So the humans were asked a lot of questions and they had to answer. For example, here, look what they did. Okay, they chatted with humans. Human, hello, who are you? Then AI should reply, I am an AI created by OpenAI. How can I help you? So this is the data that humans have wrote. It's not done by AI naturally, but just by AI itself. So this is the data that was given to AI by humans. So every time you type something on ChatGPT, um, something that you think is done by ChatGPT, it's not. Or the answers when you receive after typing something, it's really something that the humans have trained it on. So this is the data that the humans feed it by themselves. What does an HTM stand for? So a lot of things were done by humans. So this question answer structure, which is called the optimization, at the end, it is also called post training kind of fine tuning. So this is where you teach the model how to react to question and answers. So basically, the point is that a lot of data that ChatGPT uses is from the internet, but a lot of question and answers related structural data or the fine tuning is from humans. So the humans were paid to do all of these things. The other thing is, how does an LLM look like, right? What happens when you, so this is how an LLM looks like. So you don't have to understand this. This is just for you to see how it looks like. So this is where the data goes in. This is an input where your data goes, where your sentence goes. For example, I have a cat is your sentence. It is broken down into numbers and then into tokens. And this goes, and as you see, there are many mathematical formulations here. Here there is this particular formula. Here there is addition between two things. Somewhere there could be dot product subtraction. So this is the model which does a lot of other operations, mathematical operations. And at the end, it produces an output, which is also a number. So if your question was, I have a cat, it will produce what is the color of your cat, let's say, or what is the name of your cat. in numbers, and then you can structure it again into words, basically. So you can again make it into words, basically. So this is what the model looks like in general, and this is a small version of ChatGPT model, NanoGPT, which has 85,000 parameters. So the ChatGPT, or the GPT that ChatGPT uses, is pretty big with a lot of parameters. But this is how it looks like somewhere. It's a small model. This one is a small model, but the ChatGPT or the OpenAI group uses a bigger model, right? So this is just for you to see how the model actually looks like. So it's basically a mathematical equation that is put together into this chain of processes. And with this, we can now go to ChatGPT directly. Okay, so it's not open. Let me go to ChatGPT and see what can be done, basically. How does it look like? So this is how ChatGPT looks like, right? We can ask it, what is your name, let's say, and we want to just see what it will reply. My name is ChatGPT, you can just call me. So this is something that was done at the end after the training of data. We just talked that this is the huge internet data, and this is the fine tuning questions. So these answers are part of the fine tuning data. And you will often realize that ChatGPT always gives you an answer from the Wikipedia most of the times, because a lot of this data is also generated from Wikipedia. So whenever you type something, it might also give you an answer from Wikipedia. So the point is that the ChatGPT not always gives you the right answer, but it gives you an answer which was part of its data, training data. So this is how the framework of ChatGPT looks like. Here are also other options that you can do. There is an agent mode, which I'll talk about very soon, briefly, because this was our last slide. We talked about the importance of data. We talked about databases. We talked about why governments are investing so much in these databases. We talked about data bias, which was one of the most critical topic of our chat today. Um, then we talked about how ChatGPT looks like, right? We talked about how the model looks like. We talked about a paper that introduces fine tuning of these ChatGPT models. So all of this, a lot of these question and answers, ideas or structure are something that humans wrote by themselves, and then the model was fine tuned around these question answers. Um, and we also basically now know the importance of data slightly more than what we begin with. Um, and with this, I would like to move to the last slide of our talk today, which is basically an homework. It has nothing to do with what we discussed, but this is something that I have developed based on, or a homework that I thought I should include in this session, is because a lot of your questions that I received privately and also via the group include on how can you make money with AI, you know? So that's why I decided to include an additional uh, slide as an homework. Um, so this particular page, I think that building of websites with an AI is a wonderful idea. And with all my sessions, I could keep giving you a lot of such ideas. At the end of my sessions, I'll always propose you new ideas that you can do or use AI with. So one idea, which I think you should try, is how to use AI to build websites, right? So what you have to do is, okay, the funny part is I was trying to make a bunch of steps for you to follow. But when I tried it myself, I realized you don't even need a lot of steps. It's so easy. It's very easy. It's, of course, those who are not that experienced with some of the prompts or some of the ideas in this particular uh, thing, uh, in website building or creation of websites, for them it would be a slightly more difficult, but it's not that difficult. So, for example, for me, because I had some basic ideas of these concepts, it took me, let's say, 3 hours to create my own website. And I actually did it this week. I actually created my own website. Uh, but for someone who has no experience in this particular ideas or tools in the past, it would maximum take 3 days if you really work hard and focus on it. And I think it will take even less than 3 days, but if you really push and put some effort, it would take maximum 3 days. What you have to really learn is how to write a good prompt, how to give good instructions to the chat GPT. is what you have to learn. For example, I want to create a website um, for my restaurant, let's say, and then you have to talk about uh, what what the colors of website should be. You have to talk about the what type of website I want. So you can give an example website here. You can also paste an example link, example, and you can give it an example here, basically. You can talk about all other things, then you can also talk about what additionals you want. So when you have all of this ready, you can just chat with it. And once you have once you have chatted with it, once the chat GPT and you know exactly what you want, that is when you switch to the agent mode. When you switch to the agent mode, it will just create you that website. And after that, you just have to buy the domain and deploy your website on the domain, basically. So this is what the plan is. So the homework for you all is to study how to create or build websites. And once you have this power, you can reach to the restaurants or the groups around you and just call them and ask, oh, do you need a website? I can create one website for you at this price, for example. So this is one example on how can you, learn new skills and then uh, uh, make some money from these skills using ChatGPT as well. Um, and with this, with our homework and with our important talk today about data, I would like to thank you all for staying unto the very end.